Chapter 5. A biting wind shivered its way from the northeast coast. Santiago, huddling in his thick overcoat, stood on the touchline of one of the many fields at the Newcastle training complex. Santi was smiling, and not just because his brother was putting in a confident and impressive performance in his first match of any sort with the squad. Santi was enjoying the soccer, despite the cold, but he was also thinking back to his own very first appearance at the complex. He had just arrived from Los Angeles, a complete unknown, walking out in barred boots to join a practice match between teams made up of the first-team regulars and reserves. It had been pouring with rain, cold, bleak, windy, totally different from the Los Angeles sunshine that he was accustomed to. And it had been tough, a real baptism by fire, particularly as a hard man, a veteran defender by the name of Huey McGowan, had taken it to himself to give Santi a special northeastern welcome by clattering him to the ground at every possible opportunity. Santi had put in a pretty ordinary performance, and his first appearance at the training complex had almost been his last. But he had stuck with it, eventually convincing the manager at the time that he was worth his place at the club. Out on the field, Enrique was growing in confidence by the minute and was starting to boss the midfield area. He intercepted a ball in his own half, advanced 15 yards, all the time gesturing to his fellow midfielders and forwards where he wanted them to run, and then deceived the opposition defense with a delightful chipped ball to one of his strikers. Santiago smiled and nodded his appreciation. It was a terrific start, and it needed to be, because compared to most of the young hopefuls, Enrique had very little time to make his mark at the academy. Many of them had been part of the academy system for years, being guided, nurtured, encouraged, monitored, and constantly assessed. Some had made it this far, but at the age of 15, everyone who remained knew he was rapidly approaching a major milestone in his bid to become a professional soccer player. Until now, they had all been on schoolboy forms, training a couple of evenings and Saturdays each week and playing matches on Sundays against other academy teams. But soon, at the age of 16, each boy would learn whether or not the club wanted him to stay on and join its youth training scheme, in effect, a soccer scholarship which can last up to 3 years. During that time, if retained each year, the young players would progress through the youth teams to the reserves. If they were lucky and extremely talented, they could be offered professional terms from the age of 17 onward. But most would have to wait until they were 19 before finding out if they would have a longer-term future with the club. The academy coach refereeing the practice match blew his whistle, and Enrique, running with the ball, came to a standstill. He turned back and glared at the coach, who was indicating that he had committed a foul. "But I played the ball!" Santi heard the shout from the touchline. He shook his head and sighed. There was no doubting his brother's passion and enthusiasm for the game. "Don't argue with me, son," the coach said. "It was a foul, now get on with it." Enrique nodded and backed away from the ball so that the free kick could be taken. This time, Santiago was not smiling. He knew from experience that his half-brother had a temper with a short fuse, not the best attribute on a soccer field. Enrique's birthday was in the summer. He had just 6 months to convince the club he was worth keeping on, and temper tantrums wouldn't help his cause. If he did make it, he would continue his education at the local college and do jobs around the club. But even if he did clear the next huge hurdle, there were still no guarantees. Very few kids make it all the way to full Premiership professional. Sometimes the early promise fades. A youngster who looks like a world beater at 10 or 11 may be little better than his schoolmates by the time he reaches 14. Some kids, a few, find that the desire to make it as a pro diminishes as they grow old, while others realize before they are told that they are never, after all, going to be good as they had dreamed. A few suffer an injury that prevents them from continuing, and some who never reach Premiership standards move into the lower leagues or even abroad to continue a career. At Newcastle, the great Paul Gascoigne made his debut for the first team just months after leading the youth team to FA Youth Cup glory. But players like Gaza and Wayne Rooney, who turned pro with Everton at 17, are exceptions, and exceptional talents. Even the legendary Manchester United youth squad of the early 90s, which featured stars of the future like David Beckham, Ryan Giggs, Paul Scholes, Nicky Butt, and the Neville brothers, included others who never made it through to the big time. Everything had been explained in great detail to Enrique, his mother, and Santi. And Santi had stressed time and time again to his young brother that he could succeed only by putting in every ounce of effort over the coming month. The sound of the whistle marked the end of the session, and Enrique came trotting over to his big brother. How did I play? Good, but you shouldn't argue with the ref. But it wasn't a foul! Enrique snapped, his temper flaring again. Enrique, you're here to learn, to listen, to watch, and to learn. The guys you're working with have been in soccer all their lives. They live it and breathe it. They know every move, every kick, every tackle, every tactic, and every foul. They've done it all before and they have seen it all. So don't think you know better than they do because you don't, and you probably never will. Enrique was breathing heavily, but he nodded his acknowledgement that Santi was right. They walked back toward the changing rooms. While I was watching, I was thinking about when I first arrived here, said Santiago. Is this one of those back-in-the-day stories, said Enrique with a sigh, because I'm cold and I need a shower. It is an old story, said Santi, but maybe one you should hear. I want to tell you about Jamie. Jamie? Jamie Drew. You've met him at the house, the guy married to Lorraine, who looks after Rosie. Oh yeah, said Enrique. Your friend, Jamie, the plumber. Santi smiled. That's him, but he wasn't always a plumber. When I arrived here, he was in the reserves too, and he was good, really good. A midfielder. Watching you reminds me of Jamie. You play similar games. Enrique looked at his brother. I didn't know. He doesn't talk about being a soccer player. No, he doesn't talk about it. Because he wasn't quite good enough? He could have been one of the best. Enrique looked confused. So what happened? It was the day of my first game for the first team. I came on as a sub. We were playing at Fulham. Jamie played for the reserves. Santi paused for a moment, remembering the mixed emotions of the day. Jamie told me later it was just a tackle, a hard tackle. He twisted his leg as he went down. He was in the hospital when I got back from London. The knee was shattered and the lateral cruciate ligament was ruptured. Jamie never played again. They were almost back in the changing rooms. Why are you telling me this now? Said Enrique. Santiago shrugged his shoulders. Maybe to remind you how lucky you are to be here. And no matter how good you are, Enrique, there's a lot of stuff that can happen to stop you making it all the way. I know that, said Enrique. And I'm sorry about Jamie. His eyes hardened. But I'll make it, Santi. I'll make it. End of chapter 5. You are, Enrique. There's a lot of stuff that could happen to you making it all the way. I know that, said Enrique. And I'm sorry about Jamie. His eyes hardened. But I'll make it, Santi. I'll make it. End of chapter 5.